Today on the Inside Scoop, we're talking Michigan versus Ohio State on the recruiting trail, Oregon's ability to recruit the southeastern part of the country. But first, we're talking Tennessee recruiting. Bring on Sam Spiegelman of On3. Sam, Tennessee finished 12th last year in 2023, but Josh Heupel already has the Volunteers inside the top 10 in 2024. Tell me, who's your favorite recruit on Tennessee's commit list right now?
Yeah, I think without question, it's J.J. Harrell out of Mississippi, one of the big risers in the recent rankings updated on three. He's now in the top 100 of the on 300. 6'2", 185 pounds. He's really a basketball player that's just really started to get used to playing football. He just made a birthday commitment to the Vols, and that was a massive get for Josh Heupel in this program. He had been thinking about committing ever since his first visit to Knoxville, but he's really good moving with the ball in his hands. We talk about him being a basketball player. He's got great hand-eye coordination. He can jump through the gym. He's got a massive vertical jump, makes him a mismatch on 50-50 balls, working in the red zone, and he's really good after the catch. He's really good beating you deep, and he's really good working the middle of the field. I don't think there's anything, and talk about that basketball background. He's good adjusting to the football, which is really hard to do at an elite level. And I think J.J. Harrell is really going to kick off what should be a really promising Tennessee 2024 cycle.
All right, let's take a look at some of Tennessee's top uncommitted targets in the 2024 cycle. Up first, we got five-star wide receiver Mike Matthews, five-star defensive lineman Williams Nwaneri, five-star running back Jarrett Gibson, and four-star safety Travaris Banks. Sam, five-star wide receiver Mike Matthews, where do things stand between him and Tennessee?
The five-star wide receiver from Georgia, we know he's high on Tennessee. We know he's going to take an official visit at some point to USC, and it seems like Clemson is also trending with Mike Matthews for a fit. They're in a good spot in that, I would say top tier group with Mike Matthews, but it seems like we just talked about J.J. Harrell being committed. Tennessee is aiming to get not one, but probably two elite receivers in this 2024 class. They're really in it with Mike Matthews, and they're also behind the scenes making a really strong push with another five-star Texas wide receiver, Micah Hudson. Listen, he's visited Texas quite a bit, to A&M, and he's been to Lubbock, but he's looking at some out-of-state programs, Ohio State being one, Georgia, and also Tennessee. Tennessee has been working to get him on campus. Kelsey Pope, one of the best recruiters in the country, showing that. And about a possible 1-2 punch of J.J. Harrell with Mike Matthews or Micah Hudson, and Tennessee could be in store for a really bona fide spark on offense down the road.
We'll call it the Jalen Hyatt effect if they could pull that off. All right, let's move on to the number one player in Missouri, five-star defensive lineman Williams Nwaneri.
Nwaneri already made a visit to Tennessee in January, and he said that he's going to get back for an official visit, whether it's a summer official visit or getting back for a game day in the fall. Either one of those visits, if not both, would be really big as they try to step into an area of the country like Missouri that's always ripe for the taking. We know that Tennessee is also in the mix with another five-star from the area, Ryan Wingo. They seem poised to make some noise in that region of the country, and Nwaneri, as they look to build up in the trenches, particularly on the defensive front, is their top target, and I like where they sit, at least moving forward.
Man, there's some offensive firepower on this recruiting board. You also got five-star running back Jarrett Gibson, who's rated the number one running back in America.
Right now, it feels like this is a Texas versus Tennessee battle, and I think that the momentum has shifted over to the Longhorns, who signed Cedric Baxter, the number one running back in the country, out of Florida a year ago. Under Steve Sarkisian, they're not going to have too much trouble recruiting elite offensive players, and that includes Jarrett Gibson. But Tennessee, we're talking about the players that they're recruiting at skill position players. With J.J. Harrell and Mike Matthews, they're pretty high up at receiver, and Jarrett Gibson, the same goes for him. And we'll keep an eye on the Vols, if something goes wrong with Texas over there.
Where do they stand with one of the top defensive backs in the South, Travaris Banks?
Tennessee seems like it's in a tight race with Florida State right now with Travaris Banks, one of the best safeties in the country out of Tuscaloosa, Alabama. He visited Auburn in January, Oklahoma, Mississippi State, and get back to Florida State, get back to Tennessee. He said that he wants to get a closer look at what the Vols staff looks like on the field coaching during spring practice. To me, it feels like a two-team race with these visits looming very large because he's going to make a decision there around June 18th. And like I said, Florida State, Tennessee, both battling for one of the best safeties in the country.
Sam, we can't talk Tennessee's top targets without talking quarterbacks. Last year at this time, Volunteer Nation was wrapped up in the Nico Imaliava recruitment. And this year, they don't have a QB committed just yet. But you got two names on your radar. Tell me about Tennessee quarterback recruiting.
Yeah, this seems like a coin flip with whether it's going to go in favor of Jaden Davis or Jake Merklinger, two of the best quarterbacks in the country in the on 300. Jaden Davis has been awaiting, right? You know, the RPM is favoring Michigan, has been since a good part of last fall. But since then, you know, he's been entertaining Tennessee, Clemson, maybe North Carolina. But Tennessee feels like it has a legitimate shot with Jaden Davis, who in my opinion is probably one of the top uncommitted quarterbacks in the country right now. Half of the quarterbacks in the country are committed. The other half are still evaluating their options. One of those is also Jake Merklinger. He's been to Tennessee, Georgia, and Michigan State as much as any schools in the country. You know, I think that Michigan State might have an edge, but he was just at Tennessee. He's really high on Josh Heupel, and Georgia just made a change at offensive coordinator, and we'll see if whether Mike Bobo might be a better match with Merklinger than Duncan was. But Tennessee needs to get its quarterback. They need to find their guy, and they got two good options still around.
Yeah, the quarterback, no matter what year it is, he's still kind of the centerpiece to your class. So we'll continue to follow Tennessee recruiting through the spring into the summer as they kick it into high gear. Sam, thanks for stopping by the Inside Scoop. Michigan and Ohio State have as heated a rivalry as there is in college football, both on the field and the recruiting trail. While the Buckeyes have consistently won out with some of their shared top targets, it's been the Wolverines who have taken home the last two matchups between the programs on the field. 2024 will be no different, as the two are already set up for a handful of momentum recruiting battles in the Midwest. Here are 5 prospects to watch with the Buckeyes and Wolverines that are both in hot pursuit of. Let's look at these Ohio State versus Michigan recruiting battles. You got 4-star cornerback Bryce West, 4-star running back Jordan Marshall, 4-star edge Elias Rudolph. 2 for 1 here. 4-star offensive tackle Deontay Armstrong and 4-star edge Devontae Armstrong. They're twins. Then we move on to 4-star quarterback Jaden Davis. Let's bring on Chad Simmons of On3 to find out which way he's leaning in some of these battleground recruitments. Let's start with 4-star corner Bryce West. He's from Glenville High School, the powerhouse high school of Ohio, the number 4 ranked corner in the country. Chad, where are you leaning on Bryce West?
Yeah, Josh, hard to go against Ohio State with a kid from that program that's fed the Buckeyes over the years. But yet, this is Clinksdale versus Tim Walton. He's been to Michigan numerous times as well, just like he has Ohio State. But I have to lean towards the Buckeyes right now for Bryce West.
All right, let's move on to 4-star running back Jordan Marshall out of Cincinnati, Ohio. 5'10 and a half, 190 pounds. Great back with speed and power. Released a top 4 that includes Michigan, Ohio State, Tennessee, and Wisconsin. Chad, which way you leaning for the Cincinnati product?
This one's tight. We may have to come back to this one, Josh. I think more like a push for this one. It's extremely tight and to go either way. I think, obviously, you mentioned 4 schools in the Final Four. I think right now it's tight at the top between Michigan and Ohio State. And Michigan's been on him longer, more consistent. Ohio State's come on strong here late. If I had to lean one way when a race is this tight, it's hard to go against the in-state program, Ohio State Buckeyes. But again, this one's extremely tight.
Yeah, and we're going to circle back on all these recruiting battles, especially between rivalry schools like Ohio State and Michigan. So who knows? Next time we check in with you, your answer might be different. Let's talk about 4-star edge Elias Rudolph. He's an on 300 prospect, 6'3", 200 pounds. He's been picking up a lot of interest. He even got a couple offers out of the South this month, UGA and FSU to name a few. But he's in the middle of Big Ten country. Chad, which way you leaning on Elias Rudolph?
Yeah, the interesting twist here, Josh, is he just moved from Cincinnati down to Deerfield Beach, Florida. Does this hurt Ohio State or Michigan? That's still to be determined. But right now, if I had to pick one, I lean towards Ohio State. He's very familiar with the program. He knows that coaching staff. He's a top target for both. But even being down in South Florida, we know Ohio State can do some damage down there as well. I like where the Buckeyes sit right now out of the two.
All right, Chad, let's do a little 2-for-1 right here. We got a pair of twins, the Armstrong twins. Deontay, he's a 4-star edge, and Devontae Armstrong, he's a 4-star offensive tackle. You got to imagine when they go in the backyard, they can probably get some pretty good reps in against each other. But Chad, which way you leaning on these twins?
Well, they're going together. We know that for sure. I think they grew up in a family of Ohio State fans. They went to Columbus before they had the offer, went back after they had the offer. They plan to be back multiple times this spring and summer. It's hard to go against the Ohio State Buckeyes right now. I like where Coach Fry, Coach Day, and that staff sits with the big twins there in Ohio.
All right, guys, before we move on to 4-star quarterback Jaden Davis, do me a favor and subscribe to that On3 YouTube page. We're doing something special here, and we want you to be a part of it. Hit subscribe to the On3 YouTube page. All right, 4-star quarterback Jaden Davis. We're in the beginning of March, and I figured Jaden Davis would already be committed to Michigan, but he's not. So now Ohio State has entered the picture for the number 4 ranked quarterback in the country. Chad, he's out of North Carolina. Which way you leaning on this one?
Yeah, the Buckeyes have tried to re-enter the picture here. This time a year ago, I would have leaned towards Ohio State. Fast forward now to 2023, March 1st. I like where Michigan's at. Even though they're going through an OC change, Sharon Moore taking over as the OC for Jim Harbaugh. He's going up there in a couple of weeks. If the visit goes well, again, I've said this before, I think he could commit here soon. I think Michigan's definitely in the driver's seat. Ohio State has a lot of ground to make up to get back up to where Michigan's at for Jaden Davis.
All right. Thanks, Chad, for weighing in on some of these Michigan-Ohio State recruiting battles. We'll check back with you soon.
Sounds good.
Dan Lanning was on the Hard Count Live this week with J.D. Pickell. If you haven't caught the hard count yet, that's a must watch for you. All right. They talked about Oregon being a national brand and recruiting as one as well, which means they recruit coast to coast. But one area that they hit particularly hard is the South. So let's hear this clip from Dan Lanning on the Hard Count real quick.
And you obviously acquired a ton of talent in the 2023 cycle, have a top 10 class. What is the national brand of Oregon, and how do you utilize that to go places outside of the West Coast to Texas and those Southeast states?
Yeah, ultimately, I think Oregon's a brand that is a national brand. We can go anywhere in the world and go get the best players, and that's our job as coaches, is to go find the best talent that can make our team better. And this is a place where people want to play, a place where, players want to come and compete. They have a familiarity with Oregon. This is one of those schools that a lot of kids grow up saying, hey, this is my dream school. This is where I want to play. I've always envisioned being in a place like this. And that allows us to go anywhere. It really allows us to go anywhere and find the right guys that want to be a part of something great and be a part of our team going forward.
All right, you heard Dan Lanning right there talk about Oregon's national appeal. So let's talk a little Oregon targets in the South. We got 4-star running back James Peoples, 4-star wide receiver James Madison II, 4-star linebacker Justin Williams, and 4-star linebacker Jamonte Waller. Sam, James Peoples is in Texas, but that's the South these days, right? They play in the Southeastern Conference, so Texas is now the South. Tell me about James Peoples, where his recruitment stands, and why Oregon is in it.
James Peoples, one of the best running backs in the country out of San Antonio. Despite being in San Antonio, comes from a military background, so he's kind of open to playing anywhere in the country. And like Dan Lanning, we just heard him say, the national brand, and he's in that age range where he grew up watching Oregon on TV, competing for Pac-12 and national championships, and that's how he views Oregon right now. It feels like an Ohio State, Texas, and Oklahoma battle for James Peoples. But Carlos Lachlan, one of those recruiting coaches on Oregon's staff with deep ties to the South, particularly Mississippi and also in Texas, is leading his recruitment. Oregon has definitely picked up the pace with Peoples in the last months, and they're in line to get a visit this spring to determine if they're going to get an official road.
Moving on to 4-star wide receiver James Madison II. What's Oregon's chances there?
To talk about the importance of building relationships, and Dan Lanning and Junior Adams have done that with James Madison out of South Florida, have gotten him on campus as much as Georgia and Miami in his recruitment, which is incredible to think about. And now is in the mix for one of the best playmakers at the position out of South Florida. This staff puts a huge emphasis on relationships and obviously, other things like professional development and whatnot, but the relationships matter for someone like James Madison, who's emphasizing that in his recruitment.
Hey, you get him out to Eugene, Oregon, and anything can happen. Four-star linebacker Justin Williams, he's an intriguing prospect, especially with Dan Lanning being such a defensive-minded coach. So where does Oregon stand with the four-star linebacker?
Yeah, Dan Lanning is a big reason why Georgia once signed Nakobe Dean, and he might be a reason why Oregon signed someone like Justin Williams out of Conroe. Oak Ridge is about a little north of Houston. One of the best, most athletic linebackers in the country. His tape is absolutely a blast to watch. If you like playmakers, he can run sideline to sideline, and he's a dream for someone like Dan Lanning who wants to insert him into the middle of his defense. Williams is coming off a visit to Alabama. You know, he's still a priority for schools like Texas and Texas A&M in state, but I think the Ducks are the favorite early on. They're my pick on the RPM, and there's still a long ways to go with his recruitment, but I like where Oregon stands, and they'll probably get him on campus a few times before he makes a decision.
All right, back to the state of Mississippi for four-star linebacker Jamonte Waller.
Yeah, well, Oregon made a big splash signing Dante Dowdell out of Mississippi last year. That was a guy that both Ole Miss and Mississippi State and a lot of other schools in the SEC wanted, and Oregon went and got him out of the SIP. We talked about him earlier. Carlos Lachlan, their running backs coach, comes from Mississippi, and he's got a great relationship with he trains with Dante Dowdell. If you watch Waller play, he moves his feet really choppy, really quick. And because he trains with a running back who now plays at Oregon. Jamonte Waller has his eye on the SEC. He visited Alabama. He's set to see LSU and Auburn, see Ole Miss, but he's also set to see Oregon. That's a team that he considers in that same conversation as those SEC schools. We talked about those ties to Mississippi for that Oregon staff. And that's really a visit to watch to see if Oregon can contend with those other SEC schools down the stretch for Waller.
Yeah, the one characteristic that I've noticed of Dan Lanning and this Oregon staff is they're going to back down from no one. And sometimes that means they're going to win some battles, sometimes they're going to lose some battles, but they're not going to back down. All right, we'll continue to follow Oregon recruiting throughout the spring and summer. Thanks, Sam. Thank you for watching. Make sure you smash that subscribe button for me, and remember to check out all the videos on the On3 YouTube page.